Friends, it is my absolute pleasure to introduce Professor Manaseki-Holland to you tonight. It took us a long time, a very long time, and she has been so patient and so kind to me. Dr. Manaseki-Holland is joining us from England, and it is very early in the morning, probably 12 o'clock at night, not even 1. And this is her second time coming here. Anytime I invite her, I feel very guilty. But because the information she has is so very unique, I think maybe God will forgive me. And then for the third time, I will invite her to come and give another fireside. I will start with a short bio. Professor Semira Manaseki-Holland is a pediatrician and a public health physician with 30 years of experience living and working as a doctor, health service manager, policy advisor, and researcher in the UK, Geneva, WHO headquarters, Mongolia, Afghanistan, and Tajikistan, and research and development work across 4 continents. Professor Manaseki lives with her family in the West Midlands, conducting research in health, health system, and community development projects, also in Africa and Asia, as well as teaching in the University of Birmingham. I would like to welcome you, and I really, really appreciate that you were able to make it. Professor Manaseki-Holland, please go ahead. Please you introduce your topic, if it's okay.
Thank you very much for that very generous introduction. I don't think I deserve it, actually. Thank you. And there's no apologies needed. Thank you so much for inviting me. It's my pleasure. Can you hear me all right? I've also turned off the light behind me because I think it'll interrupt with the view you have. But I don't know if you have a good enough image. Can you see it enough? So thank you very much. Yes, the topic is something close to my heart really recently. And from the introduction, you might note that, I'm not a sort of environmentalist as such. I'm a pediatrician and public health doctor, and I work in poor countries, basically. But, climate change and pollution and environment and all of these things have affected all of us, and that includes research. So I do quite a bit of work now as well in aspects of climate change and environmental pollution. In terms of pollution, it's mainly to do with this microplastics and plastics and how it affects health, although research in this area is really quite early in its development. So I just, I guess, thought we had something similar to this in our own community. And we thought that, this is a topical area. You often hear about it in the news about various pollutions and actually plastic polluting our seas, oceans, and rivers. And more now we'll start hearing about whether it does or doesn't affect health. And at the moment, it should be said that there is a debate about this. So I'll present very briefly, really, or scan over the evidence that there is, and then talk about, more importantly, what we can do as ordinary, humble human beings, and also generally what perhaps we could encourage in our policymakers and those who make the decisions, since after all they are the ones that voted by us or somehow linked with us, so we can influence those things no matter who we are in our own way. I'll draw on the teachings of the Baha'i Faith, as this is a Baha'i fireside, and I believe most of you are familiar with the teachings of the Baha'i Faith, so we'll go into that when it comes. So first I'll go over the microplastic component and what it is and how it's relevant and so on. So thank you very much again for inviting me. Can I share my slides? I'm
Absolutely.
not sure
Can
how
you,
helpful they are.
Professor Manaseki, can you speak just a little louder,
Louder.
please? I appreciate it.
Yes, hold on. Close the door so others don't wake up in that. And can you hear me now?
Yeah, yeah.
So let me see if this, can you see a black box or not really? Can you see an interference?
We can see trustees of the planet overcoming the microplastic threat with
Can you see
Baha'i
a little
Faith.
box on the top right-hand side? No, black box. No. I'm just wondering whether my video image is interrupting your view.
No,
Maybe
no,
it's
no,
that.
no. Don't worry
No.
about it. No, no, no.
Okay, that's great. Thank you very much again. So here we go. This was the title we chose for tonight. And we'll move on to, let's see if I can make this work. Okay, there we go. So the sad reality, unfortunately, is that although plastics are very helpful in our lives and have enabled actually great progress and access to very many things and preservation of food and many other, aspects of our lives, many things we don't even think about. This I hadn't thought about till I started working in this area. We have plastics everywhere and they are very, very useful. But unfortunately, it appears that even the ones that we think are degradable, what's called biodegradable plastic, actually end up degrading into small plastic bits, which is what microplastic and nanoplastic is. And that is what we basically, drink, eat, inhale, and therefore it's in our lives everywhere, it's in our body everywhere, it's in our oceans, and probably in our future for a good while. So the question here is, what can be done? Is there something needs to be done even? And what are the principles needed for effective action? And who are the players? So a little bit of background. MNPs is somehow how micro nanoplastics are categorized. These are a kind of a new emerging class of pollutants in the environment everywhere. And microplastics refers to bits of plastic of any type that are less than 5 millimeters in sort of size and diameter, whereas nanoplastics are less than meters. They are omnipresent, they are everywhere, and exposure to microplastic is actually through all the various means that can possibly be. So we have direct exposure through ingesting, that means eating it or drinking it, and also through inhaling it, breathing it in. There is virtually nowhere in the world that is deprived of this bounty of inhaling, ingesting plastics. Since they are actually everywhere in Africa, in deep parts of, maybe very far remote parts of jungles of Amazon or Papua New Guinea, but most parts of the world you can now find microplastics. We also are exposed indirectly through the agricultural soil around us, the landfill, leaches, I'll talk about leachants, rivers and lakes around us, the marine water, and so on. How do they look like? What are they? If you put them under fluorescence microscope, you can visualize them better. And they are either in the form of what's called fragments, which sort of, it is what it says, or fibers, which as you see are sort of like filaments. That's how they categorize. It is important because apparently the bigger the surface area of the part, the more it is able to do various things. So that means these fragments. So I'll come to that in a minute. Exposure outside of our living habitat, basically everywhere. So whether it's through, you know, city cars and factories manufacturing devices, or whether it's through pollutions, plastics, if you like, degrading either because they're biodegradable or just because they break up. Various other things like tires of the cars and friction on the road, and all sorts of things. We end up having bits of plastic in the air, usually nanoplastics, sometimes microplastic. We put a lot of our factory and various products, whether it's even sewage, in our oceans and rivers, so it pollutes them. And eventually all this goes into the fish, the animals that eat the grass and the agriculture that we've got, which then goes into our food chain. In our homes, almost everything you can imagine has some component of plastic, at least in the world of the West. Ranging from the nappies that the babies wear, the toys that children play with, the carpet these little symbols imply exposure. Books, covers of books, even some kinds of paper have plastic in them. Our clothing, almost all clothing, unless it's 100% cotton or wool, and that's nowadays very, very rare. All kind of appliances, even sometimes glass is not proper glass, and doors of cabinets, tables, often they have a layer of plastic if they're not 100% wood. All sorts of containers, shelves, our TVs, all sorts of things. And depending on what it is, obviously the type of plastics are different, but they shed if you like, bits of themselves, microplastic, in different ways. Also, if we heat them up, either in microwave or put hot food or drinks in them, also they, again, different types will be different, but usually they, you increase your exposure. All sorts of bottles nowadays and food containers or coverage has plastic, almost unavoidable. We have reduced, some supermarkets have reduced plastic packaging, they call it, but actually the packaging they have got has often an inside layer of plastic, which in terms of our exposure is no better than not having it, no better than the whole thing being plastic. But it is better for the environment, obviously, because it's less plastic. And then in terms of the outside environment, and usually that's through inhalation, believe it or not, the tires, so we talk about, for example, having electric cars, which are less pollutants in the air in terms of some gases, but actually because usually they're much heavier as cars, the tires wear out, they're more than a ton, some of these electric cars, and so the tires tend to have more wear and tear, and they actually the friction on the road produces microplastic. And then there's all sorts of other things. So, for example, when you wash your clothes, bits of the fabric, which are some forms of plastic, come off. They go partly in the air as you dry them, or the water goes in the sewage. Children's play areas, synthetic grass and all of those, and many other things. Research so far in terms of health has mainly been either in looking at where you can find different types of plastic. So you're not intended to read this. It's just to give you some idea of, this is just a fraction of the types of plastics there are. But, they've been found in placenta, in meconium is the poo of the baby, that's when it's first born. Breast milk, blood, feces, all parts of body, including brain, heart, and lungs, obviously, and gut, and so on. In terms of what effect they have, they often the research has centered around animal studies or laboratory studies rather than human beings. It is very difficult to do tests on human beings to work out what it does to human beings, because obviously you can't give something you think is toxic to people and see what it does. But, you know, we know enough about these other models to make good guesses. But I should say that these are mostly guesses, but good guesses. So, for example, we know from animals and from laboratory studies that plastic itself, not the additives. So I should say, you probably know that plastics essentially are complex compounds made out of carbon and hydrogen. But they have different properties depending on how big is the chain of carbon and hydrogen, and also how various other compounds are attached to them or elements are attached to them chemically. Mainly plastics come from petroleum. So, for example, when you add certain types of what's called additives to these plastics, you may get fire retardant plastic or curtains or carpets. If you add certain other things, you may make it harder plastic or softer plastic, or you may change the color based on what you add, the additives you add, and so on and so forth. So these additives have different properties in themselves. And they are actually, many of them have been proven to be actually well known to be carcinogenic, causing cancer, also causing hormonal effects. So infertility, issues with, you know, maturation of various parts of the body and so on, depending on what hormones we're talking about, what stage. But that we are not talking about these additives today. We just have to remember there are also these additives that are issues for health. But we are talking about the plastic itself. So bits of plastic, essentially. It is a bit difficult to separate the plastic from its additives, but nevertheless, let's try. And so the bits of plastic, again, depending on what plastic, I guess, but they cause inflammation, essentially. And inflammation, you know, is the foundation of almost 90% of human conditions. Inflammation essentially means when, for example, you scratch your hand too hard, or, you know, you get a sore, or you get an infection, things become red and swollen and irritable, possibly itchy, you know, very uncomfortable, painful, whatever. That's inflammation. Now, it's quite a generic, it's a general term, but it can happen anywhere. So when you have a heart disease, it's a kind of inflammation. You have infection, it's a kind of inflammation. You have irritable bowel disease. A lot of us in the West now suffer from some kind of allergies in kind of diets that we've got. Those are all kinds of inflammation. And many cancers are sort of go with inflammations or somehow irritated by them, and so on and so forth. So in terms of gastrointestinal system, that means your gut, essentially, we know very well that plastics cause inflammation and may well be linked with all these irritable bowel kind of types of conditions. They cause various issues. This epithelial barrier exists in our lungs, and it exists in the gastrointestinal system, in all throughout, from our mouth down to our anus. And basically, this is the fine kind of layer of cell that covers everything. And this becomes affected by plastic, and it can be damaged, it can be inflamed, and that's what causes basically the problems. In the respiratory system, in our breathing system, it also causes similar kind of things, a bit like the pollution in a bad city that sort of gives you irritated lungs, possibly asthma if you're asthmatic, asthma attacks, and so on. Also, you know, it can go inside of your body from your gut or your lungs, and then cause inflammation in other places. NCDs means non-communicable diseases, things like heart disease, cancer, and so on. Proximal and distal organs means near and far organs from the gut and the lung. And again, this causes various things, potentially. We don't know them all, but we can make a good guess. There are these other issues as well. So this is sort of a little bit of a summary here. There is studies and papers behind all of this if people are really interested. I can send summary papers about them. So other issues have been found is that this idea of synergistic or additive toxicity, which means that if something else is toxic, it can add to that toxicity, or that thing can increase the toxicity of the plastic or the additives of the plastic. If a person's exposed to both that thing and the plastic. That includes many, many things. For example, later on, I think I have got that in the next slide, so I'll wait for that. But one of the things it can do essentially, or increase doing, is that it can increase the uptake of those toxic things in our body. This sort of synergistic effect. Sorry. It can also disturb, this whole line is about how your cells are disturbed. So these are the things that the cells in the body do in order to survive. And these things are affected by plastic, by this sort of effect they have. There are neurotoxicity, that means your nervous system is affected and metabolic system is affected. There is the gut and lung dysfunction, inflammation, I already mentioned. Microbiome, so many of you would have heard about microbiomes. Microbiomes are these things that are good bacteria in our body. So you might, some of you might be having special yogurt or special drinks that people say, there's, supermarkets say, oh, this is lots of good bacteria, microbiome, this is really good for your gut. So that's essentially supposed to be good bacteria. But what happens with microplastic is because these bacteria also, ingest the plastic, it can damage their function and their goodness, if you like, imbalance of good bacteria. As I said earlier, they can affect also reproductive system in terms of being able, reproduction, having children. Genotoxicity is when your genes can be affected, as in your DNA or RNA, which help your cells in your body. Sorry, this is all a bit gloomy, but what I should say is it does sound very gloomy. But the good news is, obviously, like any toxic thing, there is a limit. So you don't know, it doesn't mean if you have a speck of microplastic, you're going to have all of these problems. It's to do with how much you have, how much exposure you have. And that's why it's good to know where the exposures are, because we can reduce our exposure. We can discuss that later if people are interested. But I just thought, since you invited me, I'll cover the evidence, the research anyway. So this is the last slide on all this gloomy stuff. And this relates to what I was saying earlier, that because of the shape and size of particularly microplastics, not nanoplastics. So nanoplastic, the very small ones, are the ones that get into your cells and get into your body, whereas microplastic tends to sort of be pooed out. But it can carry all these negative things with it. It can be a carrier for other pollutions, other toxins, and bad bacteria. Basically, they adhere to the plastic, and the plastic carries them further, and they survive further. So the plastic serves as a vector. It's called a vector. Like, for example, they fly, the mosquito in, tropical places may carry malaria. That's a vector. Here, microplastic is a vector because it can carry various bacteria, it can carry pollutants. This I referred to earlier, chemical additives that it has. It is added during manufacturing to prove the property, to improve and to provide the properties and the performance of, and this should say improve, I apologize, of the microplastic, of the final material. And this can be released, it's called leached out, leachants, out of the plastic, and that itself has what, depending on what it is, will have different effects. One positive effect they have is that they can actually, for some toxic material, they can add as a kind of what's called sink. which means that because they adhere to that other thing, they actually lower its toxicity, because if it's microplastic is bigger, it may not absorb as much of those things, um, our body, for example, in the gut. So there is some positive effect in terms of health. But as I say, all of these things depends on dosage as well, like how much exposure you get. So, be vigilant on the things I mentioned. Try not to get plastic things, especially not eat and drink out of plastic. Don't warm things up in plastic. Um, Try to, not just wash everything all the time, all your clothes and things. You're basically shedding more plastic into the environment. I mean, I'm not saying don't wash your clothes, but some people are in a habit of washing everything once they wear it once, um, and so on. Anyway, there are different ways of reducing our exposure, certainly in terms of eating and drinking. Perhaps we can't control inhalation so much. Then I just wanted to demonstrate very quickly with one of my studies in very sort of far poor part of Africa, and it shows that this microplastic is omnipresent. So I do some work in West Africa, Mali. Mali, you may know, is a francophone West African landlocked country. There is no, sort of ocean access. Here is Mali. You can see up here on the right-hand side. It's a big country. It's a war zone at the moment. All of this area, there is civil war going on. And it's one of the poorest countries in Africa, even though apparently the Mali kingdom once was the richest ever in the history of planet, even to today. But now, unfortunately, they are very, very poor. We had some other type of research in 120 communities. So I should say clusters means communities. In doesn't matter this detail. In urban and rural Mali, around this area, Bamako is the capital. It's a big city growing, lots of shanty towns and places, sort of slum areas. So as part of the other thing we did, we collected samples of babies' stool, poo, and water that the baby was about to drink. And then it's actually quite difficult to extract microplastics from things. It's a big, big process and very expensive. Maybe that's one of the reasons there isn't much detailed research. But anyway, so we went through this little process, some in Mali, some in the UK. And, to cut a long story short, everybody said they have some form of plastic. This is like a list of the surveyed items, some of the items that they said they use, but obviously a lot more items have plastic in them. But this is in rural areas. I mean, very poor little big villages, or in the city. These are poor communities, not the rich communities. You can see almost 100% of these communities, basically all of them have some form of plastic, but almost 100% they drink out of cups or bottles of plastic, plates and bowls have plastic, so on and so forth. 95% of people drink out of some kind of plastic something. So there we go. This is in some of the poorest parts of our world. As I said, we did some analysis, and almost all this is now from the water. Sorry, I can't see what it says at the top. I think it says water. More than 80%, basically almost all of them actually, had some form of microplastic in rural and urban areas. And this is just telling you whether it's fiber or fragment, like I was describing earlier. And, what kind of polymers? Polymers, a type of plastic. I mean, we only could measure certain ones, the common ones. And you see they all have some of the common ones. Or the communities. These lines each represent a community, sorry, I should say. You see, this is 120 communities. And this is about the stool, the poo of the babies, and all of them virtually had some plastic in them. This is our wonderful team in Mali and the wonderful team in Birmingham that did the work. And now I'd like to say a little bit about the Baha'i concepts and principles that will, if you like, help us think how we can address this problem in our world. But I'm not going to cover particularly personal exposure other than what I've just said in terms of trying to reduce our how we eat and drink, from where and how. So this is more about how to improve the state of pollution, but very directly relates to plastics, because plastics is probably one of the main pollutants actually we have in the environment at the moment. So these extracts I have here are quite common actually Baha'i teachings applied to this problem of our age. And there are two very interesting documents that are relatively similar, draw on each other. The first one came out in 2000, sorry, this should say 2003, not 2023. 2003, it was the Baha'i, BIC is a Baha'i International Community, is an NGO, organization, charity organization that works with United Nations at an international level. And they come up with statements that are presented to various UN events. Most of you will be familiar with these statements, all online, extremely interesting, on all sorts of social issues and topics of the news that are very, very interesting to most of us. So BIC produced a statement on environment, Baha'i statement on the environment in 2003. For the World Summit on Sustainable Development after the Rio Earth, I'm so sorry about the spelling here, Earth Summit 2002. Then they produced very recently, 2023, so that 23 should be here, another statement for United Nations Climate Change Conference, COP29. Again, on this one on climate, the other one was more about pollution, but they're sort of similar themes. There are basically 3 or 4 major themes you could divide this kind of guidance and Baha'i teachings on this kind of concept of action towards environment. And the first, perhaps, is done really well through this beautiful quote of the Guardian Shoghi Effendi, written to an individual believer in 1933 who asked a question about environment. Could I ask somebody else to read this? It's good not to have just my voice all the time. Ruzjan, could you ask somebody or yourself read this quote?
Okay, I pinned you. That's why I couldn't see anybody. So yeah. Aniela John, or probably Heather, Max.
Sure, we cannot segregate the human heart from the environment outside us and say that once one of these is reformed, everything will be improved. Man is organic with the world. His inner life molds the environment and is itself also deeply affected by it. The one acts upon the other, and every abiding change in the life of man is the result of these mutual reactions.
Thank you very much. There'll probably be one more later. Thank you for that. That was very kind of you. So this is a very beautiful quote, and quite an obvious one nowadays that we understand more about climate change and pollution. But basically that this is part of a fundamental belief of the Baha'i Faith, and there is a lot of actually teachings on the integration of nature and man and the importance of the earth and our stewardship of the planet, which is the title of this talk. And so this basically extends to the
You're muted.
Oh, sorry. Did you not hear anything after the reading? No. Okay, I'll just repeat that bit. So I was saying that this is a very beautiful quote, that's very that reflects a lot of very kind of quotes from the Baha'i writings, where humanity is described in sort of deep connection with the planet, with the earth and the environment, and the notion that we are interconnected. is sort of emerge as attributes such as dignity and nobility of man. So the whole idea that from this notion that we are interconnected with the planet, we need to think, well, how do we, how does that connect with the reality of man? And this idea in the Baha'i writings that man is created noble. So this is a very interesting concept, that man is created noble, carries a moral responsibility with it. So nobility is not just a quality that is static, but it carries with it responsibility and action. It is in the way we treat each other and in the way we treat nature and the environment in terms of respect and compassion. And these are actually in other Baha'i quotes, but we don't have time for quoting everything. Now, this is in stark contrast to the current climate, really, of our certainly Western world, but everywhere, of consuming as much as we can, more clothes, more food, throw things away, not repairing things. Materialism, this whole concept of, reuse, recycle has become trendy. We don't really know how to do recycle very well. But reuse is not really done very well. There are still many of us who would sort of turn our nose up at somebody giving us their sort of clothes they don't like or they're not wearing anymore, but they fit us very well and it's very beautiful, but because it's secondhand or used clothes, or reusing a plastic box that had fruit in it in the shop actually can still be used for something. Or a plastic bag that may be now dirty, but you can just wash it and reuse it. This concept of reuse, is part of this respect and compassion for environment and actually for others, because through that pollution, we are affecting, millions of children who are growing up with the pollution in their food and whatever the pollution in their food and their lives, so on. And this whole notion of individualism is very, very much promoted, certainly in the West. Me for me and everyone for me, more profit, more benefit, for me and my company. And really, what I guess I understand from Baha'i writings that these concepts of consumerism, materialism, individualism are beneath the station of man if man is created noble and dignified. This concept of stewardship of earth, of the planet, is very much a part of various Baha'i writings. And that this is an expression of the fact that actually we are world citizens. So most of you will know that beautiful quote that says the earth is but one country and mankind its citizen. So we are citizens of the earth, of the planet, and therefore we are stewards of that earth. Being a citizen means you love your country, or the planet, and you look after it. And therefore we are indeed the trustees of this planet. And there's only one we've got, really. It has vast resources and biological diversity, and humanity must seek to protect this heritage for the future generation, even if it's not going to affect us, and many of us feel that, of course. This concept of diversity, I mean, there's some beautiful quotes of Abdul Baha and Baha'u'llah about how diversity in nature, but of course we talk more about it in terms of diversity in humankind, in culture and race and so on. But actually there is a lot of Baha'i writings about biodiversity in nature, and that diversity is healthy for the planet and that it's very beautiful. I think I have a quote after this about that. These things, this concept of nobility, stewardship, bring about also or engender this concept of collective responsibility. So, we have Human Rights Charter, but you cannot have human rights without somebody having the responsibility to give that rights to others. The same applies here. We can't expect to have a wonderful planet if we don't take responsibility for making it better, not just for ourselves, but for everyone, because actually, nature and environment and climate doesn't have boundaries and the borders. Everything crosses, as you know, across countries and across borders. So this is certainly something totally out of control of our politicians. And, unless we, each of us, take responsibility, we will reap the benefit or hazards of other people's irresponsibility. So we want to, if we all want to be healthy, we all want to have this collective responsibility and act upon it and promote it. Measures to safeguard biodiversity must come to be seen not as a discretionary commitment, not something that, oh, well, we'll do it if it suits me, but rather as a fundamental responsibility. So Baha'is and Baha'i writings, Abdul Baha certainly talks about this concept of collective responsibility, and Shoghi Effendi, the Universal House of Justice, as being a fundamental responsibility of being human and being a Baha'i. A full consideration of the potential environmental consequences of all our human endeavors is part of that nobility and stewardship, that we should be considering all our actions. I wake up in the morning, what do I do? How many times I sort of flush the toilet even? How many times do I, change the water or how fast do I run the water when I would wash my dishes? I go to office and I work in places in countries where usually there is no running water, there is no toilet. Mali, even in the city, many people live without a toilet or running water. Here I go to office and people have a glass of water. It's just had water in it. It's not dirty. It's just had water in it. Okay, it's got their lip marks on it. And they open the water the fastest it can possibly run. It's hot. It's running for, at least 1 or 2 minutes while they wash this cup that's only had water in it. And I'm standing there thinking that's 3 buckets of water ran for that little cup. And, that would supply your family with water for a day in Mali. It's very interesting, our notion of what's cleanliness and what is okay to do. So I recommend people going to poor parts of the world, and you'll take a different view on everything you do when you wake up in the morning. So this concept of having, for all our human endeavors, from little things that are very personal to big choices that we may make, such as voting for people, or if you're part of a country that has referendums or things like that, to think carefully about the decisions you make, the letters you write to members of parliament, how you engage with anyone who has decision making, or if you're a business person, how you consume, you make your trades and so on. Then this notion, and we come back to this, to temper our individual and collective actions with moderation. Sounds very mundane, but moderation is a very important spiritual quality. So moderation in, of course, many things, but in our case here, particularly about consumption. So things I've just been talking about, do I really need to buy yet another cup? Everything has consequences in terms of pollution and climate change. And also in terms of development, do we need yet another type of car? Do we need yet another type of carpet? Do we need yet, not just as individuals, but as a society? And there is a very interesting quote from Abdul Baha about moderation in civilization. I don't really know what that means entirely, but it's a very interesting concept, that this idea of development also needs moderation. And of course, extremes of it is development of weapons and so on and so forth. But, maybe we can not go quite that far and apply that to other developments. Then this notion, this other spiritual quality of humility towards nature and towards others, affirming that nature should not be exploited for economic or self-interest. There is linked with that this divine and spiritual disciplines that are promoted in the Baha'i writings that are directly related to this idea of stewardship and responsibility for the planet and for others. This idea we had earlier in the last quote that our friend read, where is my cursor? Here. That harmony of human life and natural life is a fact, if you like, a law of nature. At least it's required for both human and nature to be healthy. We should have deep respect for nature and the interconnectedness of all things, seeing especially in nature a reflection of the divine. So here we move from just a social thing of interconnectedness to the concept of spirituality and the divine. Maybe somebody would kindly read this quote.
I can do that for Ruth.
Please, please. She's my sister, French Canadian. Go ahead.
Okay, with my accent. Thank you. Nature, in its essence, is the embodiment of my name, the maker, the creator. Its manifestations are diversified by varying causes. And in this diversity, there are signs for men of discernment. Nature is God's will and is its expression in and through the contingent world. Tablets of Baha'u'llah.
Thank you so much. So we referred to this notion before that diversity is in Baha'i writings and is actually a very important thing. So you see, this is one of those quotes directly from Baha'u'llah. But the fact that, nature is related to God directly. So it's a very actually moving quote, and sort of I find it quite moving. And to be able to act upon this kind of notion, Baha'i writings tell us we need to have spiritual transformation, both at the personal level and societal transformation. So because this is a spiritual notion, this whole nature being part of God, in a way, perhaps we need to be doing more than appealing just to logic. When we want to change ourselves or change others around us or do social action. For behavior change, changing the way we do things, we all grow up, or, whatever age we are, we're exposed to our environment, to our society. People do things, we feel we're part of this society, I've got to do it. Otherwise, I'm not a good citizen, or I'm not a good, neighbor, or I'm not a good wife, because that's what people do in my part of England. This feeling of having to be affiliated to a group of people. So this is a kind of a motivator for people. For behavior change, we need motivators. There are many things we know are not good. We should not do them or change that. Many people smoke. They know it's bad for them. I don't do any exercise. I know it's bad for me. Diets, we all have unhealthy food and we know it's bad for us. So just knowing something is not going to help us. And this idea of spiritual transformation is actually one of the elements that can change our behavior and the behavior of our society. And that links very directly to this Baha'i global endeavors of the Ruhi Institute, where we're trying to basically have discussions and have approaches in our neighborhoods to make the whole neighborhood, not just us, more spiritually inclined, more deeper thinking, more caring, just by greater interaction, by more devotional meetings, by perhaps reading meaningful writings, not just even Baha'i Faith, from any source. But this idea to appeal and develop our spiritual side will help us also in this ability to respond to the needs of nature, is what my understanding is. I'm not sure whether I got it right. And therefore, this spiritual and personal transformation needs to be guided by this love of whatever you believe is the greater thing. And, not everyone believes in a God the way everybody else believes. Whatever many people, even atheists, believe in some law of nature or some greater power or whatever. But that thing is what helps us you know, that attraction towards that higher thing, and obedience to that, the laws that we believe that thing has for us as human beings and as a world, is how we can make those great transformations and achieve a sustainable future for the nature and for world. And there, as I said earlier, certain spiritual disciplines or qualities that we can try to promote in ourselves and in others, that we find also in the Baha'i writings, but many faiths, that is relevant here. We already talked about moderation. Also this concept of commitment to justice. You know, Baha'u'llah's hidden words that says, you know, justice is my gift to thee. So justice is a very important part of being human. And if we really have a just heart, it is a spiritual quality, we will not want to be overusing anything, you know, in our lives that therefore means we're great consumers, or we're materialistic, or we're individualistic, where other people have nothing. And our heart wouldn't take that, you know, it'll make us do things differently. We should be detached from the things of this world. I don't need to be having the latest telephone that comes out with iPhone or whatever, you know. Luckily, fashion seems to go around nowadays. You keep your clothes for 5 years, they come back again. But, you know, this kind of ideas, I mean, they're very humble ideas, but they're part of this not having to comply with what the world tells us, being detached from this world, and the humility towards nature, as in respect and love and wanting to better nature, and seeing it as not just some inanimate object that isn't relevant to us. And that nature and people are part of the divine. So this is two beautiful quotes about these things we've been discussing. Maybe again another friend could kindly read these two, or one of them, and then someone else read the other. Thank you so much.
Go ahead, friend.
Every man of discernment, while walking upon the earth, feeleth indeed abashed, inasmuch as he is fully aware that the thing which is the source of his prosperity, his wealth, his might, his exaltation, his advancement, and power is, as ordained by God, the very earth which is trodden beneath the feet of all men. There can be no doubt that whoever is cognizant of this truth is cleansed and sanctified from all pride, arrogance, and vainglory. Baha'u'llah, Epistle to the Son of the Wolf.
Thank you so much, Gary. Thank you.
Gary, you can read the next one as well. Go ahead.
What is it of which ye can rightly boast? Is it on your food and your drink that ye pride yourselves? On the riches ye lay up in your treasuries? On the diversity and the cost of the ornaments with which ye deck yourselves? If true glory were to consist in the possession of such perishable things, then the earth on which ye walk must needs vaunt itself over you, because it supplieth you and bestoweth upon you these very things by the decree of the Almighty. In its bowels are contained, according to what God hath ordained, all that ye possess. From it, as a sign of his mercy, ye derive your riches. Behold then your state, the thing in which ye glory. Would that ye could perceive it. Baha'u'llah, summons to the Lord of hosts. Ya Baha'u'llah.
Thank you very much. Thank you, friends. Thank you, Gary. They're very powerful quotes, aren't they? And they're directly from Baha'u'llah. And really very humbling, right? And I don't think many of us think like that when we wake up in the morning and take a step out in the yard or in the street. Yeah. Okay, what can we do? I mean, there are many things. I'm sure you're better at this than me now, but I just sort of took from the few writings and guidance that I came across, things in the Baha'i, those texts that I mentioned earlier, references. So this is very interesting. So we haven't discussed this. So one thing practically we can do, this is more easy to understand. We talk a lot about this concept of oneness of humanity. Baha'i Faith revolves around the concept of oneness of humanity. Everything is about unity in diversity and the oneness of humanity. And so what is proposed in those BIC documents is that we should be guided when we want to think about nature also by this concept of oneness of humanity, because it leads to the recognition of our interconnectedness and collective responsibility to others. And of course, others are part of this planet, and hopefully that raises awareness of the planet as well. And that we are one with the planet. We've read those quotes. So oneness of humanity is not just humanity, it's humanity and its environment. You know, if I care about that, you know, you probably know very well, there are islands in the world that are beginning to buy land from other countries because their country is going underwater because of climate change. If I love humanity, if I believe in this oneness of humanity, I will think about what my carbon footprint, my consumption, you know, carbon footprint, you're probably all familiar with this. I apologize if I say things, I explain things you all know, but, you know, carbon footprint is the amount of things I consume in a day, which includes electricity, includes, you know, everything, water, all the utilities, as well as clothes that I wear and food I eat, and how much they're processed. So in the West, we have a lot more processed lifestyle. So everything we do somehow revolves on some energy use. You know, things that are in packages have been through factories, and those packages have taken more energy, and so on and so forth. So, you know, if I believe that those poor people who are affected, like their houses are underwater because actually us in the West are just happy to run the water and have the lights on and just whatever, I'll think twice, right? About the size of my house, about how much I run the water for that glass of water, and so on. So anyway, I thought that was a very interesting application of the oneness of humanity, concept of oneness of humanity, which is the spirit of the age, as Baha'is would say. Even though we don't always see it in the news, we can see the trends across last century and a half, that things are going that way. We can't help it anymore. We can't be independent nations anymore. You know, part of the action is to have compassion and respect, as we said, for others and for nature. Again, through that recognition of oneness of humanity and the world, and also through seeing the divine in nature, which we've already discussed, which can be, you know, also motivated by our love for the divine, for those of us who are not atheists. Applying spiritual principles, or you could call them human principles, of moderation, humility, as opposed to consumerism, individualism, materialism. So I think these are very practical, really. Just think twice about everything you do, everything. Reminded of dignity, be reminded of dignity and nobility of ourselves and our neighbors and the people we don't see across continents. The dignity and nobility of all men and the collective responsibility it bears for us. And we mentioned up here. But be cognizant of this. This nobility is really important. If I'm a noble person, I will not have my nobility degraded by my actions that are beneath me, which is overuse, excessive use, etc. There are certain tools as well we can use. So those ones are more qualities and things we want to nurture, but there are tools. So in the Baha'i Faith, we say we want science and religion to be in harmony. So that means that, you know, if you or your daughter or son or your neighbor or friend is a scientist or a religionist, you know, those things could be in harmony in order to promote better understanding, but Abdu'l-Baha says, deeper understanding of the natural world, not in a materialistic way, and looking at the results of our science, where is it leading to, and the role of all that science and religion in the humanity's collective development, not just my development, not just my country, but collective development. And both manifested in material and spiritual development, because, you know, they go hand in hand. So just because we're wealthy doesn't mean we're spiritually healthy. And maybe vice versa, and neither is good. The other is what most of you will be very familiar with, is that Baha'is have this notion of consultation that is slightly different to the way people make decisions out in many companies and businesses nowadays. So Baha'i approach to consultation in decision making, and whether it's in institutions such as businesses or governments, or you know, local institutions or communities, or in our own families indeed. So in communities could be in our neighborhood. Because remember, all of us are part of a neighborhood. If we can just affect my neighborhood or my friends around me, my family, that's part of the whole. That's fine as well. And to learn more this concept of Baha'i consultation, in principle, I'm sure everybody's familiar with, just in case somebody isn't in this crowd, you know, Baha'i consultation is supposed to be selfless, both in the way we contribute and the way we hear other people contribute. So it is in a Baha'i consultation about anything. Imagine I'm sitting with my family and we want to discuss about holidays this summer even, right? We might want to talk about it in a consultative way. That means everybody actually has a responsibility to give their view. That is part of that process. It's not humility to just not give your view. It's not actually a good thing not to give your view. As long as you give it with humility and detachment, you don't expect people to always agree with everything. And once you've given it, you detach yourself. Similarly, others should take everybody's view with open heart and not see it as an attack on their view or something else if it's a bit different. And, you know, the melting pot of different views, the clash of different opinions brings about the spark of truth, is what Abdu'l-Baha says. So that is a tool that we can promote more and more, whatever business or life we've got in our neighborhood, in our family, in our business, in our government, if we have power that much, so that decision-making is more wholesome and hopefully more based on also some spiritual principles. You know, if possible, read something meaningful or pray before, you know, you can have those consultations, even at work, you know, or in government. And align ourselves, and this is a very positive, a very interesting concept, that we can align our actions with positive, constructive forces that are part of the world we're living in, as opposed to negative, destructive forces. So this is part of probably a much bigger talk. But, you know, in the Baha'i writings, there is this concept that the world is going through dramatic change in order to bring about this oneness of humanity through unity in diversity, preserving our diversity while we are working in unity and recognizing the oneness of humanity. That is not easy. 150 years ago when Baha'u'llah came, you know, there was no such notion. There were all kinds of prejudices, all sorts of people being deprived, you know, equality of men and women, races, you know, everything was in disarray. And Baha'u'llah basically said that through this will of God, the revelation that has come, like every other revelation that came before, it brings about change in society. And the change this time is this oneness of humanity, recognition of oneness of humanity. But to get there, we have to somehow destroy some negative things in our cultures, such as racism, sexism, inequalities, and so on, and replace them with positive things, like the kind of things we're discussing now and the group we have here. This is a positive global group, right? We're sharing thoughts and ideas. It's such a miracle, really. 100 years ago, even 50 years ago, nobody would dream. In fact, before COVID, we wouldn't dream of doing anything like this. So, you know, the world is changing so rapidly beyond our imagination. And we want to be part of those positive, constructive forces that do good for nature, good for society, good for other people, and just look for them. And I think that's how what I understand about this. Align ourselves by looking for them in our neighborhood, in our country, in our newspapers. Don't promote all this negative stuff in the news. Don't start talking about it, making it into gossip. Talk about the positive stuff. So many people don't see the positive anymore. They think the world is doomed. Actually, there's so much good going on. We just don't hear about it. And be part of that positive force, whatever that means in your world, in your reality, in your family, in your situation. So what is an interesting statement in one of those documents from BIC is that the goal of creating an ever-advancing civilization that is both prosperous and united is challenging, and it requires these things that we've discussed. And this lovely paragraph, maybe someone can read this for us as well. We can more or less end on it. I think summarizes a lot of what we've said.
Go ahead, friends. Mr. Perimal, read it, please. Miranda? Okay, go ahead.
The goal of creating an ever-advancing civilization that is both prosperous and united. The speed and felicity with which we establish a sustainable pattern of life will depend, in the final analysis, on the extent to which we are willing to be transformed, including through the love of God and obedience to His teaching, to contribute to the constructive forces and action in process of creating an ever-advancing civilization.
Thank you. So it depends on this transformation. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Appreciated. I don't know what to do with all
Sorry, I went on too long. I do apologize.
I don't know what to do with all these hearts, Professor Manaseki. They're
You always get hard, so that's fine. Thank you.
well, we have a question. Aniela, I would like you to know that we really appreciate the fact that you participated in this fireside during the hard times you're going through.
Oh,
We love you and you are our sister.
thank you so much. You didn't have to say that, you sweet angel. I am so, so grateful. Semira, you've offered a lot of information. Where do we go? There are three things that, if you wouldn't mind, I'd like to highlight from what you have brought to us. One is that we cannot segregate the human heart from its environment, right? This is so powerful. Each have this reciprocity. You do this to the earth does this to you. It doesn't mean to, but it accumulates our ignorance, right? And but the other interesting thing, as you bring up consultation and the power inherent in this discipline, the more we cultivate it, looks like this. In this is reality. Apple comes into a very rich mineral area in Africa and says, we're going to give you this amount of money to have your cobalt. And because it is a very poor community, does not know how to consult about this, it accepts the money. And a year later, we find out it is only children that can mine. It is children that are dying at an extraordinary rate. But had this discipline been introduced around the world, No mother would have accepted any amount of money to lose her child for us to be connected like we are now. So giving voice and learning to give voice to community after community after community with this divine mechanism that Baha'u'llah has given to us is absolutely critical, that we learn to get better at this. The other thing is that, it's not just coming to the table to consult. In those quotes that you offered, it is overcoming our habits that contribute to poverty, to impoverishment, to the degradation of the earth. And I just want to call to mind that the House of Justice did send out warnings. And in that warning was habits to overcome individually, this admiration of power, admiration of status, the love of luxuries, the attachment to frivolous pursuits, the glorification of violence, the obsession with self-gratification, the indecencies, the vices, the false standards that we fall for, this all-pervasive materialism and this self-righteousness. Call ourselves to account. How can we contribute to consultation unless we are exercising and rooting out these habits to overcome? They don't even say sick habits. They're just very kind to us and reminding us. And the final thing, and thank you for letting me talk on, there has been in my field a tremendous amount of work done to help us understand how we can detox from microplastics. One is very fiber-rich diets. As soon as you buy something, put it in glass, and make sure that the top is wooden. Stay hydrated, continually flushing our system. Use probiotics. Don't buy your probiotics or your yogurt in plastic. Buy it in glass. Reuse that glass, and really strengthen the gut barrier with lots of collagen, lots of bone broth. We have to go back to natural foods. Abdullah says foods are our cure. But the last really extraordinary nutrient that we absolutely need to detox effectively is liposomal glutathione. And, it can rebuild the cells and also detox the liver and the kidneys, because it's the small glands that hold these microplastics and cause extraordinary hormonal dysregulation and all kinds of other things. So I wanted to add that. Thank you. God bless you.
Thank you so much. Thank you very much for that very important contribution. Very practical. Thank you. Very important. Thank you.
Thank you, Aniela. Any more questions? Jane, other than heart, do you have any questions?
There's a hand raised, Feroz. Sami?
Yes. Hi, Allah for everyone. Thank you so much for this wonderful presentation. I have a question in regards to why all the cottons, why all the glasses, why all these things that are good for us are so expensive that people have to go and use the plastics, use the nylon, use those things. So what is the solution? How can we get to that part?
I mean, I'm not, a manufacturing person, but what I do know is that, thank you for that very good question, by the way.
Thank you.
What I do know is that, basically it's consumer power, actually. If we choose not to get all these fancy clothes and fancy items, and we, I mean, the problem is initially there will be a lot of, there's always starts with a few initially. And that is the problem, because a few people aren't going to change everything immediately. But, you know, if we can spread the word, if you like, and this kind of awareness is raised and people aren't willing to buy plastics, they raise concern, then things can change. And basically it's consumer power that dictates a lot of these things, the prices, you know. And yes, plastic is cheap. It definitely is very low cost compared to some other things. But, you know, part of it now is the consumer power. And if people just choose and, you know, voice their concern in good time, things will change. And already things are changing, like our friend Anelia just shared. You know, this kind of awareness wasn't there 10 years ago. You know, that we should put things in glass and make sure they have, you know, wooden lids and that kind of thing. And we just have to learn new habits and adopt them. You know, it's hard work, you know, it's more expensive getting them. But for those of us who can afford it, if we can push it, things will change. You might have noticed that already, for example, supermarkets, many of them don't have as much plastic wrappers. So if people push that kind of thing, you know, it will change. That's the only
Thank
answer I have,
you.
but some of you will have better answers than me.
Thank you. Thank you.
Any more questions?
Well, how do we learn to make yogurt? Yogurt is so easy to make and put in our own glasses. Bone broth is so easy to make and put in our own glass. So how as a community, our little block, what decisions are we making together that we will not abide by anymore? We're going to protect our children because they're playing out there and they are at risk. Not only are we at risk, they're at greater risk. So we can
call them the
consult about these
generation
things.
plastic.
Exactly.
They're now called generation. UNICEF calls children nowadays generation plastic.
Thank you.
There are questions in the chat.
Yes, yes.
So I'm not good at reading the chat. You have to read it for me.
We'll look at it. Shahla Jan, go ahead, please.
Thank you so much. This has been a big concern of mine, plastic. And I try as much as possible, refuse to buy anything that is sold in plastic. I find the greatest amount of plastic that we do on daily basis is water bottles, the little water bottles. And I refuse to have any kind of drinks that are sold in plastic bottles or anything that's sold in plastic. And we've had a little bit of discussion with friends, and they said, okay, but how am I going to carry my water, you know, to work? And I said, I take a glass one. I have a glass one. She says, yeah, but the glass breaks, falls, breaks, and then you have to clean the glass. I said, I'd rather clean the glass than clean the oceans. And I find that we need to educate our children, and I don't know if you agree or not. I think if from the early days you learn not to use plastic. I went overseas, I went to Africa. Most everything they have is made of plastic because plastic is cheap. And I remember in Tanzania, a Baha'i family had a plastic factory that the government took over 51%. And I I was rude enough to say, oh, I wish they had closed it. And everybody got very upset with me. And I said, why don't they have glass factories? You know, they said, well, glass breaks and it's more expensive. And I said, I don't know if you remember, at least when I was growing up, when I was very young, to get anything in plastic was expensive. To get something in glass was cheap.
Yes.
I'm wondering if somehow we could reverse this. And I'm wondering if we couldn't start with our children. Because when my JY come over with a glass of water in plastic, I start talking about it.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I mean, if I can also answer a couple of things in the chat, I just tried to read that as well. Thank you for that. Absolutely. I think children actually are a big issue. I have grown up children. I think they're grown up. I'm not 100% sure, but they are sort of early 20s. And actually, and they're quite sensible. They're really, quite aware. They want to be, doing all the right things. But still, they're real consumers compared to what I would like to be, not compared to their friends. And it seems that, social media is a huge thing. And again, we might feel, well, we're not in that generation, but we're in this world. What we say also matters. And I think it's really, really important to do what you can in your communities or wherever, at work or whatever, to raise awareness that the children are exposed to a lot of propaganda, actually, about being consumers and about getting more and more, and that fashion and all of this, how you look, and it's really toxic. So somebody in the chat mentioned about secondhand clothing depots. Secondhand clothes, depending on the secondhand clothes, probably shed less microplastic than new clothes, because new clothes obviously have just come out of the factory and they have fibers that they're shedding. I mean, most factories will tell you, if you wash, you can see if you wash something first time, you will have shed fibers. So actually, if it's just fibers, no, they're not in no more danger than they are. In fact, you're better off wearing secondhand clothes, majority of the clothes that we've got, than buying new ones. The same goes with, new bottles that are plastic or whatever. They're not safer. It just depends what you do with them, if you're heating or not heating or, whatever. Or if they're really falling apart, obviously they're not good. But it's difficult to measure these things. It all depends on how the factory manufactured them, how they did the finishing, what the additives are that they've got. There is an issue with people, and actually nobody knows, to be honest. The research is poor, but there is a question, and sensible question, for those people in poorer countries that live and work in these, if you like, rubbish dumps. They go and collect the plastic. So obviously they're exposed to a lot of garbage. And so the talk is that they are at higher risk. But then somebody mentioned, should they wear masks? Well, masks are plastic. So I'm not sure. Most of the masks, unless you go and make a, totally 100% cotton one, most of the masks you buy, all the reusable ones have plastic. So in fact, there is a question as to are we breathing more by having the masks? Not because we want to not have plastic. People put masks on for other reasons. For example, a surgeon wears one every day. What does that mean or do? That was, I think, mainly the questions as well in the chat.
Professor Manaseki-Holland, there's another question by Louise and Bob, and then we have two hands raised. So I think this is a good time, after addressing these three questions, that we move to, because we know that it is about 1:30 your time in the morning.
Yes, I'm sorry. I talked too long.
We apologize that we are inconveniencing you. Really,
No, it was beautiful.
No, not at all. It's my pleasure.
Would you like to read what about recycling?
Which one? Let's see.
The last one.
Stop being a consumer and become
Under that. What about recycling? Okay, maybe I can read it for you.
Oh yes, sorry. What about recycling? That is often touted as the solution. Wondering if it's well. I guess at least, yeah, recycling is better than in my view, and I'm not an expert in this, but in my view, recycling is better than this biodegradable thing, because it's not really biodegradable. It's not that it goes down to carbon and hydrogen eventually, it just breaks up into smaller bits. Whereas recycling, if it is recycled, does, basically become another type of plastic rather than just be polluting the environment. So recycling in principle is a good thing, but, depending on where you live, some people don't think recycling actually happens.
Thank you, Jane.
Yes, this has been a very motivating and inspiring talk. And it also makes me very annoyed with myself that I needed to be motivated and inspired because I know better. But I guess we all need to remind one another. I wanted to ask, are there countries that are exemplary in your mind that are doing it really well?
Well, apparently the northern Scandinavian countries are doing quite well, but I don't think I think we've become aware very late. I think that's part of the problem. Already we have a lot of plastic everywhere. We've put our garbage under the ground. We exported it to other countries to put it under their ground, put it in the ocean. I think now we need to limit what we're doing. And yes, some countries are doing better than others. But also we really need new science to see how we can, I'm sure it will come sooner or later, how we can get rid of what's now already in the world. So for example, I have a colleague that's working with some bacteria that basically break down to elements, the plastic, but it does it very, very slowly. That kind of science can improve or whatever. And then, of course, that has to go with the kind of change of behavior, because no point just, having something that eats up the plastic. You just shouldn't be manufacturing it. Like the solutions you were saying, more glass, more wood, more, natural fibers and so on. And, we can do it as a planet. We've had bigger problems to solve and we've managed it. But we have to be aware and want it. Our governments, as we see, they want profit. If it's not going to improve their budget, they won't do it. So if people want it, if they're not going to be voted for next year, they'll do it, right? So, whoever you are, you live in a community, make other people aware. Somebody will have more energy than you, will do something. But if nobody talks about it, nothing will ever change. So.
Thank you. Gary, can you wait one second? Have you read Professor Manaseki, Dr. Giti Etemad's comment, any large chemical or food manufacturing? Have you read that?
No, I haven't, I'm afraid.
Okay. Would you like me to read it, or are you seeing it?
Yes, please do. Yes, sorry.
Okay. Any large chemical or food manufacturing companies in the world are trying to address this global issue. Is any progress to make biodegradable plastic? This is so close to my heart. Thank you.
Yes, so as far as I know, there isn't such a thing. I may be wrong. I'm not a, chemist or chemical engineer or, sort of material scientist. So I'm afraid I can't give you all the answers about manufacturing and degradation. But as far as I know, there is no real biodegradable plastic, if that makes sense. What was your anybody's trying to do? Yes, there are organizations, there are charities and NGOs, global ones and national ones. There will be ones in America and Canada that are really trying to voice their concern about plastic at policy level, at industry and research level, and at people's level. And yes, give them some support if you can. As I say, I believe, another thing about the revelation of Baha'u'llah is that since Baha'u'llah came, he gave us a teaching about the power of the individual. We at the time of 150, 200 years ago when Baha'u'llah came, landlords and the governments, usually dictators and emperors or whatever, had all the power. But really, he promoted elections, he promoted parliaments, he promoted democracy. And since then, we've got all these NGOs. NGOs didn't exist 150 years ago at the time of Baha'u'llah. It's only about 100 years. I think 1900 was the first NGO that came about. So this is a new phenomenon. Use it. This is, for me, the power of will of God, that people have power to say something. This consumer power wasn't there 150, 200 years ago. So, the fact that you can get, your friend motivated, you can get someone else to listen to you or read something, or there is an NGO, you can send a letter of support, or, let it to your parliament representative. You don't have to be political to write to your, whoever is your parliament representative in your area or your government. Letters make a difference. One letter will make a difference to a parliamentarian. They're not going to say, did you vote for me or not? They're just going to say, somebody in my constituency send me a letter like this. I better think about it because I might have to answer back. So, all of that is power of this age. Consultation and participation, not being apathetic, acting, doing, making a noise in your community, having a view itself is action. And that's what these NGOs do, these charities do. They try to raise awareness, they try to make governments think. And yes, there are companies who are trying to, as we described, in the supermarkets, for example, reducing plastic, but simple things like they don't have plastic bags, they have paper bags. Some governments, in India, in some parts of Africa, plastic bags are banned. They have cloth bags or paper bags. Cloth bags, it seems more common for some reason. They're doing actually as well, as we are. The sad thing is we export our plastic in poor countries so that they can bury it in their grounds by paying them a bit, and that's really, really awful.
Thank you. Before we go to Gary, you're always so patient and wonderful. I wanted to welcome Empire Habibou from Congo. I know how difficult this is for you to connect to us. We love you and thank you for being here. Ms. Nargis Ostani from Malaysia, Pina from Malaysia. Carol, where are you joining us from? Carol, Malaysia? You are muted. Nargis Khanum, thank you for joining us. I know it was early in the morning. Carol, where are you joining us from? You're muted. Okay, maybe later on you can unmute yourself. I say the name of these people because I know how difficult it is to get up early and try to be with us. We appreciate it. We thank you so very, very much. Nargis Khanum, next time bring your Chinese grandson to say a prayer. We will wait for him. Oh, he's here. You brought him because I asked you last week. Okay, that's thank you. Perfect. So we will start the prayer with, what is his name?
Boise.
Okay, perfect. Perfect, Nargis Khanum. Nargis Khanum, there are two more questions and then we will, hi Pina, so lovely to see you. Nargis Khanum, if you can wait a couple of minutes.
Thank you very much. I'm so sorry being so late.
Not
They are
at
just
all.
visiting us for 2 days.
Not at all. Thank you. Thank you for remembering that. Thank you. Just 2 more minutes. Gary, I apologize. Please go ahead, Gary.
Well, two things. It was mentioned earlier about, going beyond, we say community, but a lot of times we're confined to our neighborhoods. But if we really embrace the concept of one God, one people, one planet, then the world is our community. The other piece was that the most impoverished communities are the ones affected by this the most. They're exploited all the time. They don't have access to these high-end things, so they're flooded. They're food deserts. There's all these other little shops set up in there to exploit this community, and they don't have the means, so they end up buying the less, the cheapest things, and that's where, you just look at these communities and they're flooded, and it's greed that's propelled. I came up with, going to the store, getting a soda in a bottle too, glass bottles. The milkman used to leave at the door. It was different, but then greed, plastic is cheaper. And, even delivery of it, before, the delivery guy drop a crate of sodas and that's a waste. The glass is broken. Now they have, they're preserved in bottles. So everything, we went from, TV dinners to microwave, all of these shortcuts, everything for convenience. But look at at what cost?
That's right.
And it's a few people that reap the rewards, but the impoverished are always the ones that are affected by it the most.
That's right. That's right.
That's true. That's very true.
Thank you, Gary.
Thank you, Gary. Thank you so much. Last question, Aniela John, go ahead.
I'll be so quick. We think of the impoverished, but we always set the tone, those that have more money. And so if we can set the tone, and I'm so sorry to speak so bluntly, the endocrine system is the most affected. So your prostate, your ability to make hormones that are regulated are all compromised. You may think you drink out of glass bottles, but the top is plastic and is more toxic than the plastic bottle that you would drink out of. These, and so it takes a lot of research, but I just went to the store the other day because my husband was having surgery, and I bought 10 quart-size bottles, glass bottles to, hold soup and food and all of that. It costs $7. We can afford $7, it's the glass is made here. But how do we begin to teach each other to make these very important foods that not only are, they're doing two things. They are changing the way we eat, they're detoxifying ourselves, and we're spreading the word and teaching others. And the children in the room, my heart breaks.
That's right. Can I just say one thing as well? I don't know if you heard, but recently there was a kind of a meeting, summit, I don't think was the name of it, but something like a summit about plastic reduction for all the government representatives in Geneva, where United Nations meet. And unfortunately, I think something like 80 countries really wanted some kind of a treaty to reduce manufacturing and, somehow improve the situation with plastic. And unfortunately, certain countries that either have a lot of oil or a lot of benefit, and I'm sorry to say US was one of them, vetoed it. So that was almost sort of closed at that event. But I believe that, the vast number of countries that did stand up and say, well, we really want something done. So there was another kind of a meeting. I'm not sure what the results of it was, but there was this meeting. And, governments are also aware, and some governments that are, as you said, are poorer also are quite aware that they are affected. So again, I say that because if you write to your local government or national government, even state government, however your country works, you will get a hearing ear in time, if not now, and maybe even right now. I know from my local, MP and councillor, member of parliament councillor, they only need 1 or 2 letters because they know that many people don't write but have the same view. So if somebody has bothered to write, it means some group of people are concerned. So don't feel disempowered. Please do write through the right channels. We don't need to become abusive and violent over anything. But write to the right channels, talk to your neighbors, to your friends, spread the word. It's not just this, it's many things, injustices that are going on in our world. towards others, towards the environment. You know, we need to, like it says in the Baha'i writings, be anxiously concerned with the exigencies of your time. And that's what we need to be concerned about, issues in the world, and be active player, not a passive player. And I'm sure everybody is here already.
Professor Manaseki-Holland,
Please
this
call me Semira.
Semira John. Semira John, this has been one of those times, very rarely it happens like that. It happens, but rarely, that our chat is longer than the computer itself. And, you know, I can't catch up. So hopefully the friends will forgive me. And hopefully by now people, they have addressed their questions to you. So that shows how much we need you to come back.
Yes, yes.
Yes.
I
So
don't know. Thank you very much. You're very kind. You have wonderful speakers. You don't need me back. But
No,
it was a
no,
pleasure to be here
no,
and to
this was
present to you
brilliant.
guys. Thank you so much
Semira
for your
John,
thoughts. I've learned a lot myself and a lot of very useful information and discussions. And it's just always wonderful to have people from around the world together. You feel the energy, the vibe. It's beautiful.
Brilliant, so brilliant.
I know it's too late for you, but only one more time, probably in close to Christmas. What about that? Think about it, Semira John. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's chat later. Thank you.
Okay, sure. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. We wanted to start with Nargis Khanum's grandson, a prayer in Chinese, and then we will go Gary and the rest of us. Nargis Khanum, could you introduce him again to us? I didn't get the name. Nargis Khanum, ولش کن. Go ahead.
You are muted.
You have to unmute yourself. Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Okay. My name?
My name is Moizi.
I'm from?
From Jakarta.
Jakarta. Thank you. Nice meeting you. Please go ahead and say your Chinese prayer, please.
Chinese prayer. Let's be seen. Just want to be man. Begin. Chura Santi. Chura Santi. Okay, Farsi bakuna. Let's be seen. Allah.
Oh Allah, Hodaya Hidayat Diva. Here's my Masara Jeva Sadkot. Sitare Dirapshan Denimore. Toimuk Tadib Batava no A.
Now Chinese.
Thank you. Thank you.
Now Chinese.
No, he's going to say Chinese. Go ahead, please.
Okay. Chula Santi. I don't know the one there. Oh God, like me. You forgot how to start.
Okay. I understand. I understand.
Say Bahasa. Say in Jakarta, in Indonesian language.
I don't know any Indonesian.
Adakah penghalau?
Okay. Adakah penghalau kesukaran selain Tuhan? Katakanlah, terpujilah Tuhan. Ya Tuhan, sesungguhnya Tuhan dan sesungguhnya pada perintahnya.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
When he remembered the Chinese one, he will say one Chinese prayer.
Sure. We have now at least 5 more people. Please. Thank you. Nargis Khanum, thanks for participating. We really appreciate it.
Thank you. I'm so sorry for being late because I have visitors and the brothers, the small ones, still sleeping.
Sure. Don't worry about it at all. Please, Gary.
Thank you very much.
You're very welcome. Thank you.
I'd like to share this prayer before I say the part of a chant. Is that okay? Please. I think it's very appropriate for tonight. I just Aloha, 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 aloha. O thou kind Lord, we are servants of thy threshold, taking shelter at thy holy door. We seek no refuge save only this strong pillar. Turn nowhere, for a haven, but unto thy safe keeping. Protect us, bless us, support us. Make us such that we shall love but thy good pleasure, utter only thy praise, follow only the pathway of truth, that we may become rich enough to dispense with all save thee, and receive our gifts from the sea of thy beneficence, that we may ever strive to exalt thy cause and to spread thy sweet savors far and wide, that we may become oblivious of self and occupied only with thee, and disown all else and be caught up in thee. O thou provider, O thou forgiver, grant us thy grace and loving kindness, thy gifts and thy bestowals, and sustain us that we may attain our goal. Thou art the powerful, the able, the knower, the seer, and verily thou art the generous, and verily thou art the all-merciful, and verily thou art the ever-forgiving. He whom repentance is due, he who forgiveth even the most grievous of sins. Abdul Baha. O Lord my God, open thou the doors, prepare the means, make safe the path, and guide the way. For verily thou art the help in peril, the self-subsisting Yahweh Apah. O Lord my God, open thou the doors, prepare the means, make safe the path, and guide the way. For verily thou art the help in peril, the self-subsisting Yahweh Apah, Yahweh Apah, Yahweh Apah.
الها معبودا ملکا مقصودا به چه لسان تو را شکر نمایم، غافل بودم آگاهم فرمودی، معرض بودم بر اقبال تایید نمودی. مرده بودم از آب حیات زندگی بخشیدی، پژمرده بودم از کوثر بیان که از قلم رحمان جاری شده، تازگی عطا کردی. پروردگارا وجود کل از جودت موجود، از بحر کرمت محروم مفرما، و از دریای رحمتت منع مکن. در هر حال توفیق و تایید می طلبم و سماع فضل بخشش قدیمت را سائلم. تویی مالکت ها و سلطان ملکوت بقا.
Pina, would you like to say?
Yes, please. Thank you. This is Tina. Sorry.
Yes, Pina,
Yes.
if from
For the
Malaysia, fine.
departed.
Yeah, what
Yes.
for the departed? Sure, that's great. Thank you.
Thank you. For the departed. Oh my God, thou forgivers of sins, bestower of gifts, dispeller of afflictions. Oh my God, O thou forgiver of sins, bestower of gifts, dispeller of afflictions, verily I beseech thee to forgive the sins of such as have abandoned the physical garment and have ascended the spiritual world and have ascended the spiritual world. O my Lord, cure them from their despairs, dispel their sorrows, and change their darkness into light. Cause them to enter the garden of happiness. Cleanse them with the most pure water, and grant them to behold thy splendors on the altar's mount. And grant them to behold thy splendors on the loftiest mount. Abdul Baha, Abdul Baha. I love her.
Thank you. We're so glad you've joined us. We're so glad you joined us. Nargis Anum, he wants to say a Chinese prayer, please.
Yes. 上帝呀，拜托借着光照亮全球，24彻万国是属于上帝的指引，照贴在每一个人的耳头。
So beautiful.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're an angel, Nargis Khanum.
Thank you.
There are many grandchildren saying prayers in different languages. That's so wonderful. Gary, don't go far. Thank you so much, Nargis Khanum. Thank you. Thank you.
Bye.
Love you. Thank you. Bye. Bye. Could I ask Roya Jun? Roya Jun, did you leave? No, Roya Jun, you're here.
Which Roya Jun?
Okay.
I missed that.
Roya woman.
Woman.
Roya, can we see your face as well? Is this our Roya, Gary?
No, Roya got a call. I believe she signed off.
She signed up, so this is a different Roya. I understand. Okay, I understand.
Can I say Mrs. Masroor Halman Mufarrajan?
Absolutely. Am I correct if I say that you are your husband was Dr. Hissam?
That's right.
I am so sorry for what happened. Dr. Hissam always participated in our sessions. My deepest condolences. My deepest condolences. Please,
What
please go.
happened?
Thank you.
He passed away a few months back. Yeah. Oh, you remember, Aniela John. You remember.
Oh.
Azar Khanum, go ahead, please.
Yes, thank you. هل من مفرج غير الله قل سبحان الله هو الله كل عباد له وكل بأمره قائم هل من مفرج غير الله قل سبحان الله هو الله كل عباد له وكل بأمره قائم هل من مفرج غير الله قل سبحان الله هو الله كل عباد له وكل بأمره قائم. Is there any remover of difficulties? Save God. Say praise be God. He is God. All abide by his bidding.
Peruse, may I offer this prayer also on his behalf, please?
Sure, go ahead, please.
He is God, O thou forgiving Lord. These servants were noble souls, and these radiant hearts were made illumined and resplendent through the light of thy guidance. They drank a brimming cup of the wine of thy love and gave ear to eternal mysteries imparted by the melodies of thy knowledge. They bound their hearts to thee, broke free from the snare of estrangement, and laid hold of thy unity. Make these precious souls companions of the inmates of heaven, and admit them into the circle of thy chosen ones. Make them intimates of thy mysteries and retreats of the realm above, and immerse them in the sea of lights. Thou art the bestower, the luminous, and the kind. Abdul Baha. Is there any remover of difficulties? Save God. Say praise and be God. He is God. All are his servants, and all abide by his bidding. His holiness above. Yahweh.
Thank you so much. Is it possible for me to ask Mr. Liu Chi and Juliet to say the last prayer, please? And we want to see your face. Thank you. Thank you.
Let's pray. Katakanlah Tuhan mencukupi segala sesuatu di atas segalanya. dan tiada di langit maupun di bumi yang mencukupi kecuali Tuhan. Sesungguhnya Dia sendirilah yang Maha Tahu, yang Maha Pemelihara, yang Maha Kuasa. Katakanlah ku cukupi segala sesuatu di atas segalanya, dan tiada di langit maupun di bumi yang mencukupi kecuali Tuhan. Sesungguhnya Dia sendirilah yang Maha Tahu, yang Maha Pemelihara, yang Maha Kuasa.
Gary, would you like to say a healing prayer for Mr. Costello, please?
So what I did, it's ironic you said that. Roya just sent a prayer, her chanting the healing prayer. I put it in the chat. Is there a way I can play it?
Absolutely. You want to
Okay.
share the screen? Don't ask me how to do it.
Okay, let me see if I can share. If I can
Okay.
share, then I can do it. Hold on one
Mr.
second.
Lucci, thank you so much. Thank you for staying all this time. Mr. Perimal, appreciate it. Thank you. Nargis Khanum, we're so happy you're here. Only one more prayer. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, let me see if I have.
We're saying this prayer for Aniela's husband, who is a
Yes.
dear, dear soul, and he's going to be better very soon.
Yes. Okay, so I can share. I'm going to share. I'm going to mute and then share.
Go ahead. Wow. Wow, Gary, you are a genius. Of course, we knew that before. But anyways, Nargis Khanum, there is someone else who wants to say a prayer?
And that was Roya, by the way, Farouz.
Of course, thank you very much. I appreciate it. I really appreciate your help. Thank you, Gary. I just don't know why she left. So,
Dear Mrs. Nasrur, sorry to
Jana,
interrupt. I love to be here more, but I have to attend the event.
I'm
It was
so
very nice
glad.
to see you. It was very
I'm
nice.
so glad. Thank you so much.
Thank
Ruh
you.
Shad. Thank you so
Merci.
much.
خیلی
Thank you.
ممنون. Keep me
فدای
and him
شما.
in your
جاشون
prayers.
جاشون خالیه. Thank
خیلی
you.
خیلی. We really, really miss him a lot.
Yeah, we miss him very much.
Yeah,
Thank
please
I
keep
love
us in
you.
your prayer.
Can I share some good news?
Thank you so much.
Yes.
You know,
Yes.
my husband is doing great. We're just waiting for pathology, which is, you know, I want to pull my hair out. But anyway, Gary held like a 9-hour
Yes.
prayer jam for our seekers who are in reflections on the life of the spirit. And one of those, Gary, Shelby, went to see Miguel tonight, and she went to Baha'i.org. So we'll see. She wants to become a Baha'i. And you know what she said, Gary? She said, I love our study circles. I love everything I'm learning. I don't feel worthy. But Gary has changed my inner thought about prayer. And when I got on to see Gary, Gary was exhausted. 7-8 hours of prayer, and our seekers would just come in and out, different people in and out. For eternity, my head will be to the ground. And now look who you brought to the threshold, Gary June.
We see that dust in the pathway. That's all it. Dust in the pathway of that loved ones.
Ya Baha'u'llah. Buruz John, I love you so much. I love each of you.
I love you more. I love everyone.
I
Thank
know.
you.
Thank you all.
Aziza, I've been thinking about him.
عزیزم
Jana.
دوست دارم فروز خانم.
Nargis Khanum, why don't you say that in Malay so I understand?
آیا بگو دوست دارم عزیزم.
John, so sweet. Gary June.
I have a question. Did Mr. Perryman say a prayer tonight? I didn't hear him say a prayer tonight.
Mr. Perimal started a prayer. Did you, Mr. Perimal, or I made a mistake? I'm getting old, Mr. Perimal.
Yeah, I did.
You did.
Oh, because I had to, my sister came to the door. That's why I asked. Okay.
Guys, I love you so much. I have to run. I was participating in a difficult funeral. So I'm glad that we're here. I'm glad I'm with my own community. Love you
Love
all.
you all. So I'm going to get a recording of this, right? We're going to get a recording of this?
Absolutely. Gary, I can never die because if I go to the next world, Baha'u'llah will kill me again.
Did you get a recording? Yeah.
Yes. I'm going to stop it right now. Bye,
Bye.
guys.
Love
Thank you, little one.
Love you.
Khuda Hafiz.
Thank you.
Khuda Hafiz.
Khuda Hafiz, Mr. Perimal. Thank you. Bye. Love you.
Thank you,
Bye,
little one.
Aziza. Bye.
Bye.
Bye, Aziza. Bye.
Hello,
Allah Akbar. Allah Akbar.